In this lecture, we will learn how to use a median filter to remove noisy spikes from a signal, or how to recover a signal from noisy spikes using a median filter. This is another important application of a median filter. First, we need to import all the necessary Python modules into our working environment. Let's run this cell. You are already familiar with numpy and matplotlib.pyplot. From matplotlib, we also import style. Now, there is one new module, pandas, which we import as PD. This is a very important module in data science and machine learning. We are importing pandas here because we are not generating a spiky signal in this example. Instead, the spiky signal is stored in a file called spike.csv, which we need to read. To read this file, we use pandas, which we have imported as PD. This file is a CSV file, meaning it contains comma-separated values. The file name is spike.csv. To read this file in Python, we use the command pd.read_csv. The file should ideally be in the same folder as your Python notebook or script. For example, my current working folder is denoising my old teaching, and spike.csv is in the same folder. If the file is located elsewhere, such as on the desktop or another drive, you must provide the complete path. The simplest approach is to place the file in the same folder as your Python notebook. Let's run this cell to read spike.csv. Now the file has been successfully read. Next, we want to inspect the signal. Using the command signal.head, we can see the first 10 samples of the signal. The first 10 samples range from 0 to 9. And the signal contains both negative and positive values. If we want to see only the first 5 samples, we can type 5 inside the head command. Similarly, to see the last 5 samples, we use signal.tail5. The last sample is 4,999. This means the first sample is 0, and the last is 4,999, giving a total of 5,000 samples. Let's run the cell again with head to see the first 10 samples. Signal.head and signal.tail are important attributes of pandas. Since the signal is read using pandas, we can use these commands to inspect the first and last samples of the signal. Next, we convert the signal into a numpy array so that it can be processed easily in Python. Initially, the signal is in pandas format, but after conversion, it is a numpy array. Let's run this cell to complete the conversion. We also take the absolute value of the signal to convert all negative values to positive. For example, minus 1.44 will become plus 1.44. This ensures all values are positive. Let's check the length of the spiky signal, which goes from 0 to 4,998, giving a total of 4,999 samples. The shape of the signal provides the dimensions. The signal is two-dimensional, meaning it has one column and 4,999 rows. This information is important to remember, as we are mostly interested in the row values. Now, let's plot the signal. From the plot, we can see the signal amplitude ranges from 0 to around 400, with spikes clearly visible. The target is to remove these spikes to recover the original signal. Next, we need to determine which samples are spikes. Small spikes occur around 100. Initially, we might consider 100 as a threshold, meaning any sample with amplitude above 100 is considered a spike. However, 100 is still too high, so a better threshold is 50. By selecting a threshold of 50, any sample with amplitude greater than 50 is considered a spike. We can also plot a histogram to visualize this. Using the command plot.hist with 50 bins, we see that most samples have amplitudes between 0 and 50. Samples above 50 are fewer, and those above 100 are clearly outliers. By selecting a threshold of 50, we will remove all samples with amplitudes greater than 50 and retain only the vibrating portion of the signal. The next step is to identify the indices of samples above 50 and count how many such samples exist. This step is critical. For this, we use NumPy, specifically the NumPy function np.where. The usage of np.where varies depending on whether the array is one-dimensional or two-dimensional. Our spiky signal is two-dimensional with one column, so we need to be careful when applying np.where. To illustrate, let's consider a simple example with a one-dimensional NumPy array, A containing the values 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Python indices start from 0, so the indices of these values range from 0 to 9. Here, I am printing A to demonstrate how np.where behaves with a one-dimensional array. Printing A will display these values again. The important step now is printing the shape. From the shape, we can see that it is a one-dimensional array. Next, we apply np.where using the condition a greater than 5. The command np.where a greater than 5 will not return the values themselves, but will return the indices where the values are greater than 5. Let's run this cell and analyze step by step. First, the print of A shows our array. Printing A.shape gives 10, meaning it has 10 samples and it is a one-dimensional array. Next, printing B gives the values 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Why does it return these? These are the indices of values greater than 5 in array A. The first value greater than 5 is 16, located at index 5. Counting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we confirm that 16 is at index 5. The last value greater than 5 is 110, located at index 9. This confirms that np.where on a one-dimensional array returns the indices of values that satisfy the condition, not the values themselves. Now let's apply np.where to a two-dimensional array. First, we convert the one-dimensional array into a two-dimensional column vector using the command .reshape -1, 1. This transforms the one-dimensional row array into a two-dimensional column array. We represent this array as A to distinguish it from the original one-dimensional array A. Then, we apply np.where again with the condition a greater than 5. We store the result in BB. Let's run this cell. Printing A shows the same values from 1 to 10, but now they are arranged as a column in a two-dimensional array. The shape of A is 10 by 1. After applying np.where on the two-dimensional array, the output BB contains two arrays. The first array represents the row indices, and the second array represents the column indices. For example, the value 16 is at row index 5 and column index 0. The value 27 is at row index 6 and column index 0. Since the array has only one column, all column indices are 0. The key difference between one-dimensional and two-dimensional arrays is that np.where on a one-dimensional array returns only row indices, whereas on a two-dimensional array, it returns both row and column indices. If we examine the length of BB, it shows 2, representing the two arrays' row indices and column indices. Since we are only interested in the row indices, we extract the first array from BB using index 0. After this extraction, we have successfully obtained the row indices, which are the positions of the elements greater than 5 in the two-dimensional array. In this way, you can see that np.where behaves differently for one-dimensional and two-dimensional arrays. When applying np.where to a two-dimensional array, it returns both row and column indices. To extract only the row indices, we use index 0 to select the first array. We will stop this lecture here and continue in the next lecture, as we have not yet filtered the spikes. In this lecture, you have imported a spiky signal, observed it through a histogram, and selected a threshold of 50. This means any sample with magnitude greater than 50 will be filtered out. Since filtering requires identifying indices of values exceeding the threshold, we first studied np.where for both one-dimensional and two-dimensional arrays because the outputs differ depending on the array type